Welcome to my bike tech tips. These are very short videos on bicycle maintenance. Some of these videos are very basic like this one, but they're very practical to help you get the most out of cycling. In this video, we're going to talk about being the human pressure gauge. Now, I always recommend using either a digital pressure gauge when you fill up your tires or using the gauge that's on a pump like this one. But there are times when you're not going to have access to a pressure gauge and you're going to need to have a good idea of how much pressure is in your tires. These examples include when you're traveling and you don't have a pressure gauge, or more likely if you're out on a ride and you get a flat and you got to pump up your tire with a hand pump that doesn't have a pressure gauge. So the tip is every time you fill up your tire with a pressure gauge, use your fingers so you can feel what that pressure is like. For example, in my cross-country mountain bike, I always use 22 PSI in the front and 24 in the back. So every time I pump up the tires with a pressure gauge, I feel the tire so I can know what that PSI feels like. So I get my pressure reading, and then I recommend using your thumbs, and use 2 of them if you can, and just push. And like I said, see what that feels like, so when you fill up the tires when you're out on the trail, you'll know what that feels like. Keep in mind that different size tires will have a different feel. For example, 22 PSI in a 40C gravel tire will feel much differently than 22 PSI in a cross-country mountain bike tire. Also, different sidewalls will have different thicknesses. So if you have multiple bikes, you'll need to get familiar with the feel of the tires on each of those bikes. So after doing that over and over and over again, you're going to get pretty good at being the human pressure gauge to know what PSI is in your tires. Now, of course, I don't recommend using that method all the time. Try to use a pressure gauge anytime you can. But like I said in the beginning of the video, there are times when you're not going to have a pressure gauge. And finally, the last useful application for this is doing that quick check before you head out on a ride. So maybe you rode yesterday, you put air in your tires to the appropriate PSI. You typically don't have to fill up the tires again the next day, but you want to check the tires just to make sure you don't have a leak. So if you do this quick check with your thumbs, you can get a pretty good idea if your tires are the same pressure they were yesterday. So that's my bike tech tip of being the human pressure gauge. Any questions or comments you have, drop them below. Thanks for watching.